It started out like any regular Saturday morning. I was finishing my coffee, getting ready to head out for some range time, when I heard a knock at the door. Not loud, not aggressive, just firm enough to make me pause. Standing there were two men wearing polo shirts with HOA security stitched on the chest and badges clipped to their belts. Something about them felt off right away. They didn't introduce themselves properly, didn't give me a reason for being on my property, just jumped straight to business. One of them pointed to my gun safe, which I keep in my garage, clearly visible if the door's open. "We've had reports," he said, "that you're keeping unauthorized firearms on the premises, specifically shotguns." I blinked. I thought maybe this was a joke. I live in a private neighborhood, sure, but I've never heard of an HOA having jurisdiction over what legal firearms someone keeps in their home. I asked for their credentials. That's when things started to get tense. They got defensive, real quick. One of them even put his hand on his hip like he was carrying. I stayed calm, but inside, I was already alert. See, what they didn't know is that I've spent years training elite military units, including US Army Rangers. Dealing with high-pressure situations is second nature to me, and I could tell these guys had no real authority. They were playing a part, but not very well. The more questions I asked, the more their story unraveled. They couldn't name the HOA president, couldn't provide a single document, and the badge one of them flashed, it was a cheap knockoff. I knew then this wasn't just some misunderstanding. These guys were pretending to be something they weren't, and for some reason they had their eyes on my firearms. But just as I was piecing it all together, one of them reached for something under his vest. That's when I knew I had a decision to make, fast. And what happened next? Let's just say they'd picked the wrong house. I didn't move right away. I've learned over the years that sometimes doing nothing tells you more than making a move. My eyes tracked his hand, slowly going under that vest, and every part of me was reading his body language. Was he reaching for a weapon, a radio, a bluff? Either way, I wasn't going to be the one to escalate. I stayed calm, hands at my sides, voice steady. "You might want to think twice about what you're doing," I told him. "You're trespassing, and you're impersonating law enforcement." The words seemed to hit him, but the other guy, taller, nervous eyes, cut in quick. "Sir, we're just here to do a wellness check. We're with the community response team." That was a new one. Just 2 minutes ago, they were HOA security. Now they're some kind of self-made emergency team. None of it made sense. And in my line of work, when people start shifting stories, it usually means one thing: they're hiding something. I didn't tell them who I was. Not yet. I didn't mention that I work with tactical response teams, or that I've taught urban ops and home defense to guys who've seen combat. All I said was, "If you're legit, let's call the real police and clear this up right now." And that's when things really shifted. The guy with his hand under the vest froze for a second, then dropped his arm. The taller one glanced at him, like they were silently debating what to do next. They didn't want the real authorities involved. That much was obvious. And now I had a whole new list of questions. Who sent them? Why were they so focused on my shotguns, of all things? I own everything legally, registered and locked up according to state law. There's no way a real HOA would know, or care, what was in my safe, let alone try to take it. I stepped out of the doorway, letting them see I wasn't intimidated. My phone was in my hand now, and I wasn't bluffing about calling it in. But just as I hit record, one of them said something I didn't expect, something that changed everything. The shorter guy, the one who had tried to act tough at first, suddenly muttered under his breath, "You weren't supposed to be home." That stopped everything. I locked eyes with him, and for a moment, it was like time slowed. What did he mean by that? Was this a planned break-in, an intimidation stunt, or something worse? I knew then this wasn't just some HOA prank gone wrong. This was targeted. Someone had sent these guys here with a purpose, and now the plan was falling apart. I didn't let on how much that one sentence shook me. Instead, I kept recording. I asked him to repeat himself. He backpedaled fast, said I misheard, but the taller guy looked like he'd just seen a ghost. He whispered something to his partner, too low for my phone mic to pick up. But I caught one word, garage. That's when it clicked. They weren't after just any firearms. They wanted access to my gear, specifically my tactical equipment, which I keep locked tight in a secondary case. Stuff that's meant for training exercises with special ops. That added a whole new layer to the situation. Who even knew what I had in there? That info isn't public, and the HOA sure wouldn't have access to it. So how did these guys know anything about it unless someone tipped them off? Was someone watching me, monitoring my routines? And here's where things got even stranger. I started digging later that day, after they left. Not only did my actual HOA have no idea who these men were, but they also confirmed there's no such thing as a community response team affiliated with them. When I asked around the neighborhood, a few folks admitted they'd seen the same two men cruising slowly past my house the week before in an unmarked SUV. That meant this wasn't random, it was planned. I started wondering, was this connected to a training contract I recently turned down? Or maybe someone I crossed back during my security consulting days? Either way, someone went to a lot of trouble trying to get inside my home under a fake authority, and I still had no idea how far they were willing to go. Days passed, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Every time I stepped outside, I caught glimpses of that same unmarked SUV parked a few houses down, always with the windows tinted so dark I couldn't see who was inside. My phone buzzed with messages from neighbors, some worried, some confused, asking if everything was okay. I told them I was fine, but inside, I was piecing together a puzzle that didn't add up. I went over everything again, the fake badges, the vague stories, the sudden interest in my shotguns and tactical gear. Whoever sent those guys knew exactly what they wanted, and that scared me. This wasn't a simple case of fake cops trying to intimidate someone. It felt like a targeted operation designed to test my defenses, see how I'd react, and maybe find a weakness. Then, late one evening, I got a call from an unknown number. A voice I didn't recognize whispered, "Drop the training. Stop asking questions. All things get worse." The line went dead before I could respond. My heart pounded. This was no longer just about protecting my property, it was about protecting myself. I tightened security around the house, checked every lock, and reviewed my surveillance footage. That's when I saw it. A shadow moving near my garage door at 2 a.m. No mask, no disguise, just a figure trying to get a look inside. I recognized the gate. The same guy from the HOA impersonators. They were back watching, waiting for the right moment. The tension was unbearable. I knew they were gearing up for something bigger, something more dangerous. I kept my tactical gear close, my phone ready, every muscle on edge. But I also knew this was just the calm before the storm. What would happen if they came back, this time with real force? What if their plan went beyond intimidation and crossed a line I wasn't ready for? And then late one night, I heard it, quiet footsteps outside my bedroom window. The moment I feared had arrived. I grabbed my phone, hit record, and prepared myself for whatever was coming next. Just as I steadied my breathing and prepared to confront whoever was outside, my phone buzzed again, this time with a text from an unknown number. It wasn't a threat this time, it was a photo. A blurry, grainy shot taken from inside my own house. My living room, clearly visible with my gear scattered on the table. The caption was short but chilling. Asterisk, "We're closer than you think." Asterisk. My blood ran cold. Somehow, these imposters had managed to get inside, or at least sneak a camera in without me knowing. That meant they weren't just watching from the street anymore. They had a way in. Someone on the inside, a neighbor, or worse, someone I trusted. Suddenly, the entire neighborhood felt less like home and more like a trap. I double-checked every door and window, but nothing seemed out of place. No signs of forced entry. Yet, someone had been in my house. The stakes had just gone from high to critical. It wasn't just about fake HOA cops anymore. This was organized, calculated, and personal. The next morning, I drove to the local precinct to file a report. I explained everything: the fake badges, the threats, the surveillance footage, and the photo. The officer I spoke to was sympathetic but cautious. "We've heard about similar scams, but this sounds more serious. We'll step up patrols around your neighborhood," she said. But in the back of my mind, I knew patrols wouldn't be enough. Back home, I started digging through my own past, trying to connect the dots. I remembered a contract I declined months ago, involving security consulting for a high-profile client. Could this be retaliation, or was there a deeper grudge? The more I thought about it, the more I realized that someone had been planning this for a long time. Then came the final piece of the puzzle. A neighbor approached me quietly that evening. "I've seen the men before," he whispered. "They're not just fakes. They're connected to a group that's been causing trouble in other neighborhoods too." Suddenly, what I thought was a personal threat was part of something much bigger, and if I didn't act fast, it wouldn't stop with me. That night, I decided to stay alert, fully expecting the impostors, or whoever was behind them, to make their move. I set up extra cameras, double-checked my locks, and kept my tactical gear within reach. Hours passed in silence, the neighborhood quiet except for the occasional rustle of leaves in the wind. Then, around midnight, I heard the faint crunch of gravel outside. My heart jumped. I grabbed my phone and quietly moved toward the back door. Peeking through the security camera feed, I saw two figures moving slowly, trying to stay in the shadows. But they weren't wearing the same fake HOA uniforms this time. They looked more professional, tactical gear blending into the night. Someone was stepping this up. This wasn't a random intimidation anymore. It was a full-on attempt to break in. I quietly called the police, keeping the line open without making a sound. The officers were on their way, but I knew I had only minutes. Then, one of the men stopped near the garage and started fiddling with the lock. That's when I made my move, stepping outside with my voice firm but calm. "You don't want to do this." They froze, turning toward me, surprised but not backing down. I told them I was trained with the U.S. Army Rangers and that any further action would have consequences. My confidence seemed to give me an edge. Moments later, the police arrived, flashing lights cutting through the darkness. It all unraveled fast after that. The men were arrested, and it turned out they were part of a larger fraud ring targeting gun owners by posing as HOA security to gain access to firearms. But the final twist came when the investigation revealed something I hadn't expected. One of the masterminds behind the whole scheme was someone I had worked with years ago, a trusted colleague from my military training days who had gone rogue. The shock hit hard. Someone I once called a teammate had been trying to undermine me all along. But in the end, my training and calm kept me one step ahead. And while the threat was over, for now, I knew this wasn't the last time shadows from my past would come knocking. After the arrests, things finally started to calm down. The police assured me they'd follow through with the investigation, and the fake HOA security scam was exposed for what it really was: a dangerous attempt to prey on gun owners and take advantage of people's trust in community safety. It was a relief to know the immediate threat was over, but I couldn't shake the feeling that this experience left me more cautious than before. One of the hardest parts was coming to terms with the fact that someone I had trained with, someone I considered a brother in arms, was behind all this. It made me realize how quickly trust can be broken and how important it is to stay vigilant, not just about strangers, but about those close to you too. It's a lesson I won't forget anytime soon. In the days following, I reached out to my neighbors, sharing what happened and encouraging everyone to be aware of their surroundings and question anyone who showed up claiming authority without proper credentials. The community came together stronger because of it, and we set up a neighborhood watch group to keep an eye out for anything unusual. For me, this whole ordeal reinforced the importance of being prepared, not just physically but mentally. Training with the U.S. Army Rangers taught me more than just tactics and weapons. It taught me to stay calm under pressure, to think clearly, and to protect what matters most. At the end of the day, it's not about the gear or the training alone, but about staying aware, trusting your instincts, and standing your ground when it counts. If this story teaches anyone anything, it's that you don't have to be a soldier to protect your home and your peace of mind. Sometimes, the biggest weapon is just being ready for whatever comes your way. Thanks for watching, and stay safe.